Good morning, everyone. My name is Damon Levine, and I'm a facilitator here at PRUDE. And today we have myself and PRUDE Director Lee Song. We want to welcome you to our ongoing Black History Month speaker series. I'd like to introduce you next to PRUDE Director Lee Song to say a few words. Lee?
Okay, thank you, Damon. This is super excited today that not only because we're celebrating the Black History Month and then we're right here online and with all of you for our speaker series, but also I want to let you know that PRUDE is celebrating our 40 years in services. And the organization was founded in 1981, and we're so proud right here. Today we have Mr. David Peters. And I have heard from him and from many presentations and in the community. Every time I always learn something, and then from him, very wise and very personable, friendly, full of stories. So we are here today with our founder of PRUDE, Mr. David Peters. Thank you, Damon.
Thank you, Lee. And so I just want to reiterate that this is a series of free interactive online talks by presenters from around the province who will share stories on many subjects related to both Black history in New Brunswick and the present day Black community here. So if you're watching this live, we encourage you to put some questions in the chat area of your screen that you can ask our guest today. He would love to field them. So these talks are going to include subjects ranging from Black loyalists and Black refugees to entrepreneurship, personal uplift, and poetry reading. Now, when we talk about Black loyalists and refugees and the contributions of their descendants that they've made to New Brunswick and Canada, today's guest is someone everyone should know. A direct descendant of famed Black loyalist Thomas Peters, David Peters is a co-founding member of PRUDE, this very organization, a retired teacher, and one of Canada's first Black certified chefs de cuisine. David has been studying Black history since 1965 and, since 1968, has given lectures on Black history throughout New Brunswick and Nova Scotia at public schools, universities, service clubs, and on CBC TV and radio. He was also the host of 2 TV shows, PRUDE Speaks in 1989 and Afrovision in 1996. So without further ado, I'd like you to welcome our guest today. It is my honor to welcome Mr. David Peters. David.
Thank you very much, Damon. And it's my pleasure and my honor to be here representing our Black community in the province of New Brunswick. When I first start this talk today, bringing up to PRUDE in 1981 being incorporated, it's going to look like it has nothing to do with PRUDE when I start. And what's he talking about? Because I'm going back to 1963 and 1964. And without going back to those dates, I don't think PRUDE would have existed. As Damon just said, I took a course at Ryerson Institute in Toronto, and I studied the hotel, restaurant, and resort management course there. Through taking that course, I was contacted by the province of New Brunswick later because they were setting up a community college in Moncton in 1961. And where I had already been affiliated with a community college, had finished the training, they invited me to become one of their teaching members in the brand new one they were building in Moncton in 61. I had to inform them that I was not a teacher. They said, you will be, because we will pay for your teacher training. You will go on, but we want someone like yourself who's been affiliated with the community colleges to come in on our startup. So in 61, I started up with the community college in Moncton. I was there for 2 years, and then they approached me again and said, we're going to reopen another one in St. John in 63. Would you be interested in going there? I said, going back to my hometown? Most definitely. So when I hit St. John in 1963, one of the older Black citizens of the city, Clifford Skinner, who I will refer to from now on as Nick, because that's what we call him. Nick contacted me and says, David, you know, we've got to do something about our heritage and about the history of the Blacks. And why don't we get together? And he said, we both belong to service clubs. We have churches. Let's try to promote our history. that way, and you and I get together and decide what we're going to do. And so I said to Nick, you know, I never thought of that. And so Nick and I got together, and by 1964, we had put a nice little group of information together. And we started, first of all, with the Black Loyalists to let people know that the Blacks were involved as loyalists. They did land here in what is now New Brunswick, but was then Nova Scotia. We didn't become New Brunswick till 1785. And Nick and I started going around lecturing in the different social clubs. They had us on, and as Damon said earlier, not so much the schools right now as it was the church halls, CBC radio, and things of that nature. Now, at this time, I was affiliated with 3 different community colleges. It was 1964. I wasn't quite married yet, but I was engaged to a girl I met in Moncton when I was teaching there. And I was setting up an apartment in St. John for our wedding. And word got around the school that I was opening up an apartment and having one heck of a time doing it on my own. So a good group of 8 or 9 of the teachers got together and said, oh, Peters, come on, we'll give you a hand. So 3 or 4 weekends in a row and several nights, they helped me put a 3-bedroom apartment together, completely furnished, rugs down, painted, wallpaper. It was fantastic what the other teachers did for me. Now, I state this because this was the year 1964, the year before I got married. Yes, my apartment's ready. We got an invitation from Nigeria, from 3 federal members of the country of Nigeria, touring Canada to see how we were doing our community colleges. They were called technical schools back then. Well, it was known at the school that David Peters had an apartment because so many teachers were talking about it, that the principal called me in his office. He says, David, we have 2 Nigerian professors and members of government coming, touring Canada to see how our community colleges work. What they would like to do is become members of the community while they're here and get involved with the community and see how the Black communities operate and are doing. And we know from the gossip around the school that you've got a fairly large suite there to my apartment. And we were wondering, would it be possible for you to host them? I took a deep breath and I said, listen carefully. I'm a single fella. Yeah, I have the 2 extra bedrooms, but I'm not catering or hosting anyone. Now, if they want to come, the rooms are welcome. They can use them. I'm not cooking for them. They can eat their main meal at the community, at the cafeteria. At night, they're on their own. A washer and dryer's there. They'll do their own laundry. If they're willing under these conditions to come and stay at my apartment for the week and a half they're going to be here in St. John, no problem. Well, they accepted. So David Anababa and John Ziambo, the 2 government officials, came and stayed at David's apartment. Now, this looks like it has nothing to do with PRUDE, but it does. This was in 1964. And I firmly believe that if I hadn't had the company of these 2 gentlemen from Nigeria, I honestly don't think PRUDE would exist as it does today. I really don't. I'll tell you why. Clifford Skinner, Nick as I call him, I called Nick over to meet them because he was a very prominent Black member of St. John, and everyone knew Nick, and Nick knew everyone. And another prominent member of the city at that time was Joseph Drummond. Another one was Fred Hodges. These were very prominent. I wanted them to meet these gentlemen from Nigeria. I wanted them to be able to talk to these people. Well, David and John were staying with me. Nick had them at his house a couple of times. Fred and Joe had them out. We took them around the city. And then we had Nick and I privately in my dining room sitting around the table, had 2 or 3 very serious conversations with them. And they said, you know, from what we were talking to with Joe and Fred and you and Nick, it doesn't seem like your community is cohesive. It doesn't seem like you're together. I said, not really. I said, we've got an organization here called the NAACP. We have another organization here called Blacks for Social Change. We just seem to be, we're here, we accept each other, but we're not a nice clique group. And David Anababa spoke up and he said, David, listen, I found out in my own city what we had to go through. We were in the same situation. If you don't get the youth involved, you will never have a cohesive group of people. You've got to bring the youth in. So Nick and I, now they were with us about a week and a half, and Nick and I were still talking in the social clubs, and we were still going around teaching. We took them with us once for one group at one of the church halls, and people were very interested in Nigeria being in St. John and what was going on and so forth. But after they left, Nick and I sat down very seriously and said, you know, I think they're right. It's always us adults doing the work. We've got to get the kids involved. So I said, Nick, how are we going to do this? I said, you know, there's no cohesiveness. You know, some parents aren't speaking to other parents. And he says, Dave, I'll tell you what. And Nick always came up with great ideas. That's why I like working with Nick. We're going to start, he said, we're going to start with them, getting them involved in having to deal with the public, but reassuring their own worth and making them know they are someone and getting them out. So we put on 3 projects. We started with a car wash, and one of the churches gave us their lands and hooked us up to a hose. And we said to the kids, we're going to charge $2 a car wash. And every time you wash a car, half of that money is going to you. Let's see how many cars you can do. Now, we started with 3, Nick and I, and 3 kids the first weekend. Well, it didn't take long for word to get out that these kids were making money. And for every car they made, they got half the price. The second weekend, I think we had 4 or 5. And by the 3rd or 4th weekend, we had up to 8 or 9 kids. We had to tell them, we can't take you all. You'll have to take chances. But the kids were involving with the owners of the cars. They were talking. People were seeing that, yes, we as a Black community could use good English. We were talking well. We were pleasant. And we even got phone calls later, Nick and I, saying, you know, those young kids, my God, they were pleasant to work with. And, you know, this was coming from the white community, too. So it was nice. So Nick, and now it was getting a little chilly, and Nick's wife, Maisie, came up with an idea of putting a basket together. She said, you know, the kids really could get involved in this. And she said, we can get volunteers, we can get donations. So Maisie put a beautiful basket together. We took some of the money that we had raised from car washing, paid to have pictures taken, and 9 of the kids came and said they would take a book of tickets. And we said, for every book you sell, half the money is yours. Now go out and sell these tickets. And here, take a picture of the basket, each of you, right on the back of the picture, what's there if they ask you. Those kids raised over $300 on that basket. So 150 came to us. So we started a nice little bank account now. And the other thing we did was to sell tickets as such. Just go out and sell tickets on a $50 grand prize. So the kids got involved. Listen, we had to turn people away, and the parents were calling us now in the Black community, saying our kids are so pleased. They came home with money. What you fellas are doing is great. So we actually got enough. By the time this happened, for 6 or 7 months, people were calling us and saying, what else can we do? Our kids love it. They'd like to get involved. So we formed a little organization, Nick and I did, and we started out with Provincial Resources of Black Energy. And I said, you know, let's call it Proven Resources of Black Energy, because these kids have proven they had the energy, they're resourceful, they're out there. So we opened up an account at the bank with the funds we had, and we got a group together. And our first group, rather than Proven Resources, we talked it over, and that's what we wanted to start with, but it became Provincial Resources. Because believe it or not, Fredericton contacted us. And a person in Fredericton said, I'd like to get involved with you people because we'd like to bring our kids together too. And so we formed an organization. Nick was president naturally. I like to talk and I like to work, but I'm a person who likes to boost people. I like to promote people. I honestly, as much as I'm battling now, I don't like to be in charge. I like to be behind the scenes promoting people And I like to work with stimulating people. I don't mind backing, but I truly am a great promoter of people, and I know that about myself. I don't lead well because I'm too sharp, and I want things done my way, and that turns people off. So I found out years ago, I best promote people and work behind the scenes, which is the best way for things to get done. So in 1964, because of these gentlemen from Nigeria, and before my talk is over, you'll see it was the 1964 meeting with the Nigerians that really is the result of PRUDE being what it is today. And our first organization we started was PROBE. And word got out from the various groups that we were with and the social clubs we talked in. And they were quite impressed. And one gentleman from the Kiwanis Club came to us and said, do you fellas realize that I have an affiliation with the government and we like what you're doing? There are grants available for different things. So Nick and I invited him to my house once again, and we sat down, and he was telling us what was available. And generally speaking, he would help us fill out. I said, but you know one thing, what we don't have, and would be nice to have, would be a whole roster of the Blacks of St. John, their names, their addresses, where they worked, what they're involved in, and that would get, he says, you know, that's never been done before. So he helped us get a grant together, and with the Department of Heritage, we got our first grant through PROBE, getting a roster list made of the Blacks of St. John, and I have that list here with me. I still have a copy of it. It was 6 back-sided typed pages, and it was great. Now, as I said, while we're doing this, we got some kids involved also. Once again, we brought the youth in. Would you mind going door to door, helping us? We'll pay them at the wages. We don't want you kids volunteering. We want you to know you're worth something, and we will pay you to come and work with us. Okay, they did. So we ended up, and I said, while you're there, ask each one that you interview, do you believe or think you might have a collection to any Black loyalists? Because that's what Nick and I were promoting when we were talking in our clubs. The Black loyalists and the War of 1812 and the First World War and on there, and who was who. And I said, and so that went through. The government was very pleased. We got the money for that. And then we got a little greedy, and it worked. Nick, now that we've got this list and some think they are residents or might be related to the loyalists, let's see if we can go after a grant and see if we can get how many of their names might match the names in the Black loyalist burial ground in the middle of town. So we applied for another much smaller grant, and we got it. This we turned over to the kids, and they went around to the loyalist burial ground with the list of the Black names we had already accumulated and saw if any of them matched the tombstones on the loyalist property. Well, we knew from research Blacks had been buried there, but not one Black name was on the tombstones. And we said, what's going on here? We found out later that the Blacks were allowed to be buried in the loyalist burial ground that exists today, but at the very foot of the burial grounds became Union Street. So guess what happened to the Black loyalist burial plots? They were covered over with asphalt. And that is what Union Street is today, is where the Blacks had been buried. So that was another grant that we got, okay? So by getting the youth involved, and my topic here is Black vital contributions to New Brunswick via organizations. We were so pleased with the way PROBE was going. We were approached again. Now, we didn't do this on our own. We were approached again by one of the ministers at the church. And he says, you know, one thing that always comes through with the youth, you should show our youth here in the city what they really have. Even though there's prejudice here, and we know things are not going great in the city, this is 1964-65, We know things are, let them know what is going on. So now, by now, we're into maybe 1968, 1978. We applied for a grant. There had to be a need, and the grant had to show that there was a solution. Well, the need was to let our youth know just how much they had developed. And the need was also to bring a cohesive content to the city. This was not going to be easy. So anyway, we decided that let's get a project together. First, it had to be an interprovincial project. This came through from the Department of Heritage. An interprovincial project that was worthy, that had a need, and that was solvable. Well, the need basically was cohesiveness. The need also was, anyway, the grant didn't go through at first. So we worked on it again to find out what could we really do. So we came up with a project, and we said, you know, we've got to show there's a need for education. We have to show that there's a need for unity. And we just have to bring some dignity to the organization and to the city, and just let people know we're there and we are worth something. So Nick and I got together again. We filled out another grant. It went through, but we had to call it something. So PROBE put this grant together, and the grant we put together was called PRUDE, Pride of Race, Unity, Dignity through Education. Well, that went through, and the concept was we were going to first do it with the Halifax in Nova Scotia. Then through one of Nick's contacts, we found a group in Montreal. So we ended up with the group in Montreal, bringing 10 youth to St. John for a week, showing them what our youth were doing, what situations we were living in, what organizations we had, gave them some films on Black history, got them involved in the youth centers here in the city. And that lasted for about a week. We housed them. I had one in my place, and everyone throughout the city, and the adults now, or the Black adults now, are really coming alive. They love this, and their children were so excited and getting together. And then after that week was over, and the representative who brought the group down from Montreal was with us. Nick and that particular person who brought their group down took our 10 students, Montreal's 10 students, back to Montreal for a week to see the situation there. And then by the end of that, things got so great. And the community, I couldn't believe it. People came at a meeting we had after, and we had over 35 or 40 Blacks, all in one room, pleasant, agreeing with each other, talking about the future. We couldn't believe it. And Nick and I said about 2 weeks later, you know, that project was so successful. And we've never brought so many people together before like that. Why don't we turn the project into the organization? And we said, well, first of all, the first thing we better do then, let's strip our PROBE account financially. And we had a group of 7 or 8 PROBE members. So we got the secretary there and the treasurer, and Nick was the president, naturally. They got together, went to the bank, and withdrew the money. Now, when PRUDE was first formed, it was not incorporated yet. It got formed in 1980. So we opened up an account with the same bank under PRUDE's name and put the funds we had into PRUDE. Then, at that time, we were contacted by another member of the Department of Heritage. And they said, well, you're there, but are you incorporated? Are you a group? You know, you'll find yourselves much, much better organized and getting much, much more recognition from the government if you incorporate. So we said, okay, then we better have a meeting. So we got together to incorporate ourselves. And this was in the incorporation of PRUDE. I think it was October. Yeah, that is patent here. October 22nd, 1981. We have an official incorporated group. And the first president was Raymond Richards. And those first people in the charter members of PRUDE Incorporated in 1981 were Raymond Richards, Barbara Richards, Lillian Blizzard, Clifford Skinner, Sandra Holmes, David Peters, and George Walls. And they were the first initial organized members of PRUDE Incorporated, the charter members. Ladies and gentlemen, once PRUDE Incorporated got established, and we were incorporated, and we had our hooks into government grants and people to help us, the first 12 years that PRUDE existed, we had 37 different government grants that we applied for and got. We included over 265 youth in that, and 145 of them was Black. And you're saying, what do you mean 265? Think of the word. Nick and I said, do you realize what we did with the Black community? What we honestly named PRUDE? Pride of race, unity, dignity through education. I said, Nick, do you know what we've done? We as a Black community have done what the white community has never done. Pride of race, that means anyone can join. We've opened our doors to the entire world, formed by Blacks to show the world what they should have been doing. Nick, look what we've done. Everyone can become part of this. So throughout the grants we got, we made it a point that it wasn't all Black, and it never has been. Not every one of our presidents have been Black. It's just been a fantastic, honest to God, heritage to be part of. Listen, you have no idea. I'm an old fogey. I'm in my 80s. I gave them, ever since 1964, I've been behind PRUDE, the Black community. I'm stepping back now because my best feature, and I said earlier, I love to back people. I've been called a perfectionist before. I don't like it. But I know I'm sharp if things aren't done just the way I think they should be done. So I'm always the wrong person to have in charge because I'm too sharp. I want things, and that's just not the way. You have to be more pleasant. I know my personality. When I get excited, you're going to do it or get out. And it's best for me to be behind the scenes, backing people with my energy and watching it grow. And I've always loved to be in that position. And I am so proud today to tell everyone I am extremely pleased that PRUDE Incorporated 40 years later still exists, and they're doing a magnificent job and always have. They deal with the new immigrants. Listen, these projects we had, entry, reentry, wow, a work-oriented workshop, entry, getting the youth involved that didn't finish high school into programs and training. And I'm very pleased to say that of the 37 programs we put on, I designed and initiated 5 of them myself. And it was just heartwarming to see them go through, be accepted, and still working behind the scenes. Now, Raymond Richards was our first president, then Carl White Jr. took over, and then I stepped in for 3 years, from 1993 to 1996. And during those 3 years, I brought in a word that I learned from the Nigerians when they were staying with me. And PRUDE used it for almost 15 years. They said to us back then when they were boarding with me, do you have any great celebrations in the city? I said, we just can't get people together. We don't do a celebration as such. But it hit me later what they were saying. And now that the Black community was so involved and so cohesive and working together, I said to Nick, they gave me a word back there one night talking to them that they used for their high celebrations called Palugu Days. And that meant high feast days. So when I was president of PRUDE Incorporated, I introduced a weekend called Palugu Days Weekend, where we celebrated our heritage. We had a banquet, and I said, let's honor someone. And then we started honoring people. We started, and one of the people we first honored was Mr. James Richards. Because when the First World War broke out, Mr. Richards tried to join, and he was turned back by the Canadian government because he was Black, and he was not allowed to fight for his own country. He had Black heritage to the Loyalists, and he was told, no, Blacks can't join the First World War. So he got a group together and went to Fredericton with about 18 other Black men, and they were turned away the first 2 years that they tried to join the First World War. But they soon found out that Black lives did matter. The same as they found out in the War of Independence in London, in the States, when they had to free the Blacks to help England fight to keep the Americans under English control, that Black lives matter. And throughout the years, we've proven, not just through PRUDE, but throughout the years in general, Black lives matter. And we know they matter. We know how proud we are being Black or having Black heritage. I've been mistaken sometimes for either being an Italian or anything else. I let them know my heritage. Yes, I'm mixed. I'm a Black Métis, but I do take great pride in letting people know I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Black blood of Thomas Peters. And I'm so proud of it. And I'm so proud of PRUDE and what we've done. And throughout the years, this is what, through Palugu Days, a word from the Nigerian people that we used at PRUDE, connecting our Blacks back to Africa and existing here in St. John. Ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't be more proud than anything else in my life being a member of PRUDE. Thank you.
David, that's just brilliant. We've been sitting here just, in rapt attention, listening to you recount the story of PRUDE, and we've got quite a few questions that have come in too. So we're going to start off with Lee. Lee has a question for you. Lee, what would you like to ask David?
That's a fantastic, Mr. Peters. So like I said before, I always learn something, and this is abundance of information. I have my pen and my notebook, a page full of information about a PRUDE, starting 1981. So I'm fascinated of the youth engagement because right now we have a youth program in place, and that's for a diverse population. And how the youth was engaged, but you kind of answered my question. You had over 200 youth members that were engaged, and then 80% of them were members from the Black community.
Yeah.
Right. And so were the youth, did you lead the youth to do some physical activities, or how the engagement happened? It's hard to engage the youth members.
How did I do what? We got them involved by letting them know that they were worth something to begin with. We knew it was important that they get connected to the general white population so they could see our kids out there working. We're not lazy, we're willing to work. So with the car washes and the selling of tickets going door to door and selling the tickets on the basket, they had to go out. Oh, another thing I didn't mention too, we also had a back thing. You could rent a stall at City Market for $5 a stall. We had them baking, and we had the kids in charge selling the baked goods and dealing directly with the public, handling the money, showing them that we trusted them. And the youth started talking. And it was through our Black youth, and all of us have white friends. And next thing we knew, their white friends wanted to get involved also. And this just proved to us that the word pride of race, unity, dignity, but we had to educate people. Both the white population had to be educated that we were willing to work, that we did have intelligence, that we were worth something. Then we had to convince our own black kids, you have to educate yourselves. You have to get out there. You have to stay in school. So getting the youth involved was the best thing that these gentlemen from Nigeria ever suggested we do.
David, we have so many questions coming in for you. Another question, which is very similar to the question that Lee asked. How do you suggest we move forward in New Brunswick with sort of uniting the black communities within the province? Making sure that, let's say, the black community in Fredericton works together positively with the black community in St. John or Moncton. Would you have any suggestions on that?
Yes, I do. Get someone respected, number one, to get the presidents of each of the organizations together. And once the presidents of each organization get together, have them come up with a concept that's going to unite us. What should we do? Because we're all in the same boat, okay? We're all trying to advance and develop and work together. We're not trying to be just black. We're trying to be blacks in the society dealing with all nations, all people.
Right.
So these different, let's get the different presidents to start with and get their concepts. Let's stop being PRUDE. Let's stop being the New Brunswick Black Heritage Society. Let's stop being the African Society in Fredericton. Let's get them together. Now, if I were younger, I'd be the first one to jump in. But as I said before, I work behind the scenes now. I am tired. But your question is a great one, Damon. See if you can contact the heads of these organizations, bring them together and say, what do we really want? And how can we do this?
That's a great answer and a really good message, David. And that was actually a question from Jennifer. So Jennifer, we want to thank you for that. We also have another question, which is about the PROBE days and PROBE going into PRUDE. This is from Aaliyah. Did you or the youth experience much racism as you were going out, becoming involved in the community? And if you did, what did you do to kind of teach the youth back in the 60s and 70s how to deal with what they might encounter?
Okay, as I told you, that I went to Ryerson in Toronto.
Yes.
And when I first went there, I could not believe the openness, the doors that were opened, and the various groups and communities. When I grew up in St. John, I used a statement. I was giving a lecture at the university one day, and Elsie Wade, who was the mayor of St. John at the time, went by the university door, and she heard me refer to St. John as the Diamond of Canada. Well, she phoned me that night and said, David, I'm going to Halifax next weekend as the mayor. I love your statement. Would you come to Halifax with me and help me promote St. John? I love that statement, the Diamond. I said, Elsie, wait a minute, you didn't hear the whole program. She says, what do you mean? I said, here was the whole program, Elsie. Prejudice is so highly polished in the city of St. John, it's the Diamond of Canada. Oh God, she says, I don't need you. Listen, growing up in St. John was living hell. But you know, there's always a silver lining. You know, we couldn't go into barbershops. You're black, very words, get the hell out. I have saved thousands of dollars. I cut my own hair. I had to learn to cut my own hair because of the prejudice. Look at the money I saved. Because of my first day in school, I'm sitting there. The teacher's double checking everybody's home address just to make sure she had it. She came to me and I said, 134 Mecklenburg. No, David, I want your home address. Now here I am, 6 years old. I don't know. Oh, never mind. I'll check with the principal. I couldn't possibly be living on Mecklenburg Street. I was black.
Wow.
That's the prejudice. That's from the teacher. There were shops, doors closed right in our face. We couldn't get apartments if we didn't rent from someone black who already owned the building. We were the prejudice in St. John. But you know what it did, Damon and Lee? It gave us character. We had to become strong.
Right.
Now you're bitter at first. Oh, yes, you are. I'm not trying to. But you look back and say, oh my God, look what I've done, even though they held me back. Look what I'm getting. Look at.
David,
you have no idea. The prejudice was there. I look back at it now and say, my God, that's what made me so strong.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it really, obviously, it builds character and makes you very self-sufficient. David, related to what you just said, how did the old Colored People's Association figure into the Black community of St. John. For all of those who are watching and listening, I will share a information for you. You can actually Google this online, but David and also PRUDE and History Society member Ralph Thomas were interviewed by CBC about a decade or so ago, talking about the Colored People's Association here in St. John, which was a Black organization, Black social and cultural organization in the city for its Black community, probably up until the 1960s. Is that correct, David?
Started in the 50s. Nick Skinner mortgaged his house, bought a hall, if you want to call it that, or a building on Hilliard Street, where we Blacks could go and know we were welcome without having doors slammed in our face, telling us to get the hell out, you're not welcome. Clifford Skinner opened what we called the CPA, the Colored People's Association. And that building we used for meetings, weddings, social clubs. It was a fantastic. Nick Skinner, God bless Nick, can't promote him enough. He's another one I love backing. I back Nick anywhere he went because he was a man of great foresight. And he, now, believe it or not, even back then within the Black community, there were some of our Black members knocking Nick. Thought he was somebody. Well, he was. He didn't have to think he was somebody. And he was presented in the Black community. It took a while to get this, even amongst our own. And if you were too late, I mean, I was called high yellow nigger more than once. We had to show our people that we're gonna go nowhere if we don't do it together.
Right. Unity overall. Unity and in cohesion.
Gosh, you know, through PRUDE and the work PRUDE did for a while. Listen, we would have 35 and 40 people at our meetings. This was never heard of before. Groups of Blacks coming together, willing to work together. Listen, I just felt so good seeing PRUDE develop. I really did.
Well, David, how would you? Is there a program that PRUDE has worked on over the years, either when you were involved in the organization or after you left it, that has special meaning to you? And how would you suggest educators teach in the province, teach their students about the work PRUDE has done, and indeed about the history of Blacks in New Brunswick? That's kind of a lot of questions, but maybe you can tackle a few of those.
Shirley Brown was one of the other Black teachers in town, which was rare.
Yeah.
Myself and Shirley and Nick, it was rare to have Black people walk into the classrooms as we did.
Okay.
We got a grant through PRUDE Incorporated to put a Black history kit together to present it to District 8, which is now District 20. And Shirley Brown and I, via PRUDE grant, put a Black history kit together. We painted the kit that held everything in zebra stripes, so the teachers would know exactly what it was, some sort of African thing. It had the kings and queens in it. It had the Black loyalists in it. It had our fight trying to get in the First World War in it. And it was a history kit that the teachers could just pick up and see. Every March back then, there was a week in March when the history teachers could choose 1 week of what they wanted to put into the history kit. Not the kit, into their history studies.
Okay.
So between Nick and Ralph Thomas and Nick Skinner and Raymond Richards, we convinced some of the teachers that we knew from just being friends with them, would you please include this in your March presentations? And that's how we started getting our Black history in the schools. I phoned about a year ago to find out where the kit was. And I guess when District 8 became District 20, kit disappeared. No one knows. Nobody knows where this Black history kit, put together by PRUDE Incorporated, is today. We had videos in it. I videoed Shirley Brown doing 5 different lectures on the kit. I owned a studio at the time called Sutton Services, and I used to video a lot. And we don't know where the kit is today. And that's how we make this part of the history of the education.
That's something we'll definitely check into. We have resources we can talk to about that. Thank you, David. And that question, that was a series of questions posed by both Cheryl and Andrew. David, do you? How can I phrase this? Do you feel that society locally, the community locally, is undervaluing the knowledge of you and other members of the Black community? Is that clear? Do you feel like you're being listened to? Do you feel like people are taking into account what you did and carrying that message forward?
See, I like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Well, see, throughout the years, PRUDE has nominated and registered and honored many citizens. You'll never see my name on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Never see my name on the list in any way whatsoever. I like working behind the scenes. So personally, I don't mind being behind the scenes. I was asked 2 or 3 things if I would like to have my name promoted in the Human Rights Commission, and they honor a person every year. I said, oh, please don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, don't you think you're worthy? I said, I know how worthy I am, but in me, I just don't want it promoted. No.
There's a
listen, Dave, I'm probably one of the most arrogant people you're ever going to meet, honestly. But I like being in the back of the things. I like promoting other people.
Sure.
I don't want to be up front and promoted and displayed, and no, that's not me. And I know as much as I babble, and here you think, oh Jesus, he's lying. No, I get uncomfortable. Okay, I helped the Boys and Girls Club in St. John burn down.
Right.
They were rebuilding. I helped them put on a banquet and raise funds and show them that through my training as a chef, and I'll go with you people, and we can raise money through putting banquets on. They had a plaque to honor me to present it, and I feel so guilty today, you have no idea. They had a banquet specifically for David to honor him and thank him for what he did to help rebuild this Boys and Girls, and I wouldn't go to the banquet.
Is that right?
And they're all, and I feel guilty about it today, but I just couldn't go and be the center of the attention. I couldn't do it.
Well, yeah, that's very humble of you, David. But it almost sounds like you are embodying the phrase, and maybe you've heard this, maybe you haven't. True players move in silence.
I don't know. I just know me. And as much as I babble and I love to lecture on our history, people, I know my personality comes through like, oh, that arrogant thing. He really thinks he's somebody. Yes, I do think I'm somebody. I am somebody. I'm proud of David. But leave me alone. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, David, that's you've given us just so much today. We want to thank you so much, and we want to thank our audience today for coming to hear you speak. You've shared a lot of information, a lot of great information about the Black history, and particularly St. John area history and the history of PRUDE and PROBE and the community here in St. John. Again, we want to thank you. We also want to thank PRUDE Director Lee Song. Lee, do you have any final words for us?
Mr. Peters, thank you very much. And it's such a meaningful moment to be here with you and then engage with our audience. And this is just the beginning of our celebration for the 40 years. And the organization established in 1981 until this year is 40 years. And then PRUDE, like you said, was founded and by the members of the Black community, and you're one of the founding members. And however, PRUDE had always opened the door to welcome everyone, yes, and not only the Black members. And I quote what you have said, it is not going to work out if we don't know how to work together. Yeah. So we're all in this together, and we want to send out a message to the public. It is our history, and then the Canadian Black history, it is our history, and then being shared and celebrated among us all.
And I would just like to end by saying how pleased I am that PRUDE is still going extremely well via Lee's backing, God bless her, and that, think of the word, pride of race, unity, dignity through education. That's why PRUDE was able to open its doors to every nationality in the world, as long as they're proud of their race, and it was done by the Black community. I am so pleased. I leave you by saying, I am so pleased that PRUDE is continuing as beautifully as it is, and God bless us all.
David,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you again for your speech. We've loved it. Thank you again. Everyone in the audience, I want to thank you very much for joining us here today. And we just want to say that we have quite a few of more of our speaker series speakers throughout the month. We ask you to join in tomorrow because we're going to have David's good friend and local trailblazer, Ralph Tiger Thomas, speaking about the Willow Grove settlement here outside of St. John that was home for Black refugees for quite a few years. And that's going to be a really great talk. It happens tomorrow, Wednesday, the 10th at 11 a.m. And if you have not signed up, please go to speakerseries.prudeinc.org. That is speakerseries.prudeinc.org to register. Everyone, thank you very much and have a great day.